Welcome to the Buddha of the Basin. Today we're on Billy Meier and the similarity between Billy Meier and the Plejaren teaching material and the material that's called the raw material or the law of one. So without further ado, it is indeed true that the UFO picture made famous from its being featured in the mid to late 90s sci-fi drama on Fox, The X-Files, featuring David Duchovny as Agent Mulder, is indeed a picture that was originally taken in Switzerland by one Albert Billy Meier. There are many, many such pictures Billy has taken, though he claims, rightly, many have been stolen and that he actually had to purchase many of them back. Nevertheless, or nonetheless, if you see pictures with perfect UFOs and forest scenes of lush greenery behind them, you're probably looking at Billy's pictures. Now, Billy is still with us in Switzerland running the FIGU, the FIGU, his little autonomous group, a narco syndicate collective. He's 87 years old. Okay, he's got a long, I think he still has a long beard, very much Santa Claus, but he only has one arm at this point. There have been 25 attempts on his life, 25 assassination attempts. He survived them all. The many bullet holes one may see around his property testify to the fact that there are many powerful entities who do not want Billy's information out there, which is why, although the X-Files featured the photograph, they never went to Switzerland. Okay? And the important or salient point is that extraterrestrials, the positive ones, who are of the Confederation or just the Federation, to use a Star Trek term, do not violate our free will. Okay, they can impulse us or perhaps offer us the opportunity to have a grand vision or a new idea that could be beneficial to our soul's evolution. Think of Tesla or Michael Faraday, okay, where angels, God, a lot of these men, if you listen to these Christian stories, these great inventors who were guided by God, Francis of Assisi, all these saints who were out there in nature being guided by God to have great discoveries beneficial for mankind. Okay, going to Bose in India, and again Tesla with the free energy, Niels Bohr and Albert Einstein. These were men who are being rightly guided to try to produce beneficial outcomes, and unfortunately, powers that be guided these technologies into war and into more economic inequality somehow. So although we all have electricity, if you will, and Wi-Fi, the rampant inequality still feels like we're 70, 80 years behind, what the 50s told us we might have at this point. Meet George Jetson. Anywho, by the mid 80s, rumors about animal mutilation in the American Southwest have already come rampant, and they prompted journalist Linda Moulton Howe to create her documentary, A Strange Harvest. Also around this time, Harvard psychiatrist John Mack has begun to hear stories and accounts of credible people telling incredible stories of alien abduction, implantation of sperm, and removal of young fetuses, young babies from young pregnant women. People like Whitney Strieber even report seeing their human gray alien hybrid offspring. Now, Whitney Strieber has written books such as Communion. He's personally profited, although he's been traumatized by this. He kind of now more advocates on behalf of the grays, if that's maybe overall a good thing. If they could just come out to the public and inform us of what's really happening, we would see it's not so terrible. And that may be if they would come out fully and inform us after 70 years. But, let's not hold our breath. So by the time we get to the early 80s, there are a lot of questions. The UFO material has been intriguing for a long time. And channeling has been happening. Well, of course, we have Maria Orsic channeling from the Vril Society in the 19-teens, really starting the Nazi effort by contacting a Nordic group that apparently communicates with her in an ancient Sumerian language. which suggests all kind of things, which kind of confirm what Billy said, that these Pleiadians, the Plejaren, had settled here a long time ago, had maybe even created the Sumerians. But this could also be, as Billy claims, that the Plejaren themselves go and settle Sirius and just don't and forget where they come from, and thus create this Anak or Anunnaki empire from Sirius, and then come down as the Anunnaki, And so it's the claim is that these Anunnaki, these Plejaren groups are almost interchangeable from the point of view that they all come originally from Lyra, and that's where all human life in this galaxy comes from. Okay, so if you can get there, that's half the way home. The other point is there's only one God, it's one infinite creator, or just creation, that we're all a part of, sort of holographically. So let's get to the raw material, which is the early 80s, 1980 to 1982. There's 109 contacts between LNL research and the 6th density social memory complex, originally from the planet Venus, that's known as Ra, or Amun-Re from Egypt, the sun god. The group of LNL research is a group of 3 people and a cat, Jim McCarty, who's the scribe, Carla Ruckert, who's the channel, and Don Elkins, who's the questioner. It seems like former physics professor and professional pilot Don Elkins and Carla Ruckert, they began first, meditating and trying to channel. And then Jim McCarty gets in touch with them around 1978. And then beginning in 1980, that's where they first contact Ra. They hook their big fish, so to speak. Now, during these sessions, these 109 sessions, while Carla goes into a trance laying down on a bed with a blindfold. So during these times, Ra takes care of Carla's comfort while she's in a trance state, and sort of Ra, as a group consciousness, makes sure that the candles, as well as the Bible and the incense, they call them the appurtenances, all those things are perfectly positioned to give Carla the pleasant feeling of being immersed in the sacred as she went into a trance, and the Ra group began to speak through her mental, physical complex, right? Using her vocabulary, her articulation, her larynx, if you will. What Ra then says is that Ra is a group of souls that began on Venus billions of years ago and evolved and eventually left Venus to explore and assist other civilizations around the galaxy. 75,000 years ago is when our current evolution as a third density self-aware human species begins on Earth, right? Approximately. And so there's a few little question-answer sessions that are illustrative of this. One is a question from session 14 to session 4, so it'd be 14.4 if you search the raw material database. And so this is where they kind of go into all these different dates. 75,000 years ago is when the third density begins. 58,000 years ago is when Mu really starts, Lemuria. Okay, then we have 13,000 years ago, aid was offered to those on Atlantis. So it looks like they tried to assist being. So just that right there, the raw material pretty much says, yes, Lemuria was real. Atlantis was also real. One group that's called Quetzalcoatl, they helped the South Americans. Ra appears to the Egyptians after Atlantis. But it all begins 75,000 years ago, because that's when our active cycle begins. This cycle has not yet ended. Ra thought it would be over by 2012, like the rest of us, and there'd be some great harvest. That harvest is still yet to occur. But that's why even Jesus claimed he was here, because the harvest was coming relatively soon, and that was 2,000 years ago. So from the point of view of 75,000 years, that's why the cycle is 75,000 years approximately. That's why it seems that 2000 is still towards the very end of the cycle, which was Jesus's time, the age of Pisces being the last age in a great cycle, and Aquarius really being the start of a brand new golden era, which we are on the verge of now. Okay, so it's the thing of it is, third density begins 75,000 years ago. The lessons of third density involved we become service to others or service to ourselves. We reincarnate and we either ascend in our vibration, if you will, towards making a conscious choice to say, God is in everyone and everything, and I must serve everyone and everything. That's basically where most of the enlightened beings have got to. They love nature and all the humanity, and we're in some ways in selfless service. Not all of them bathed their feet and tended to their wounds like Mother Teresa or Jesus, but people of a scientific nature dedicate themselves in selfless service to humanity, at least as an ideal, or the great philosophers like Immanuel Kant, if you will. So the mission of our lives is to become that selflessly dedicated to humanity. It could be to our own family in a sense, but we have to also be open to the idea of humanity as a whole and really life as a whole. It just seems if the more open you are, the more likely you are to be loving to your own immediate family, because you see everybody as being ultimately one family, and it's just a matter of who you're born into. Now, if you're more aware, you're more likely to see these family members as being with you from lifetime. So if there is tension, it's even more important that you get to the root of the tension and forget and find forgiveness and extinguish that tension and that passion, because that will hold you back. Even if it's tacitly understood that you're not going to come to some full on harmonious agreement about everything. There's just letting go of tensions, resolving tensions. Agreeing to disagree is fine for the planet Earth. We're not meant to have all perfect understanding. We're meant to respect each other's points of view and respect the fact that we can't change their point of view. That's for us attaining wisdom. You see, wisdom, which is a fifth density thing, we're meant to start learning lessons of wisdom, which is the throat chakra. And that's meant to be balanced by the lesson of love. Like, it's really our love for each other that keeps us from wanting to dictate to them. We offer them their freedom out of that love. Now, wisdom may tell us, yes, but this person has committed murders in the past. We have to take meaningful steps to protect humanity, but we never stop loving them. We never treat them the way we would. We see there before the grace of God go I, meaning I have those passionate impulses in me as well. And I understand where those passions dwell. And we're all growing as one. We all move as one. And so we must offer that person the most possible freedom while respecting reality and logic. And that's something that is not in most of Jesus's teachings, because they were deliberately taken out. The actual teachings of Jesus are all about finding logic. Take your cloak and take a sword is just logical. It turn the other cheek in some circumstances, sure, but take a cloak and take a sword as well. I mean, give to the needy, but also stand up for yourself. Don't allow yourself to be robbed. Yes, if your friend comes begging for bread at 3 a.m, you're eventually going to give him bread. That is a fact. And knock and it shall be opened, And if 3 or more gather, it's even more likely that our souls can unite in some common purpose and do good. Especially if we're using pyramid shapes and things that naturally resonate and connect the energy. But we have not been taught that. Even the A-frame will resonate and collect the energy, as will a dome, a teepee. All these structures resonate and collect the energy. And that energy is called chi or prana. And that energy is literally the intelligent energy of creation, or creation energy. This is what Billy Meier teaches, that there's creation energy and we're made of this stuff. Now, it's not so much conscious. It becomes conscious through us, through the connection to our own consciousness. But even our own consciousness is really just a spark of the one intelligent infinity, which Billy Meier calls the creation, and which the raw material calls the one intelligent creator. And it's really one and the same thing. And this creation is split into 7 sub-universes, if you will, which is, I guess, where the 7 chakras and the whole secret of the 7 candlesticks and lampstands. It's split into 7, but the 7 all come from one. Just like the 7 colors. It's like that's the model of our universe, is the model of these grand super universes. And within this super universe that we're a part of are a bunch of other universes that can be connected, and just slightly like these membranes, the way they have the membranes in the new physics theory, we're only related by a slight sliver difference of time. And that's what Billy Meier found out, that he has a friend who comes visit him from a whole different universe that our ancestors more or less escaped to. So after they're attacked on Lyra, they escaped to a different, they found a way through hyperspace to an alternate universe. And that's where they reside, if you will. So like in the Pleiades, but in a different universe. So you tell me. And that's how they sort of evolve, and then they come back to us later like super evolved, because yeah, they didn't have to spend hundreds of thousands of years in war and fighting the reptilians and the greys or whatever happened to us here, in this galaxy, in this universe. Again, when you really look at the Billy Meier material, it's a lot to absorb. Once you acknowledge the UFO pictures are authentic, and then you go and you read the Talmud of Jemanuel, which was discovered at the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea and was translated by the priest, the Greek priest Isa Rashid, who then dies and is like who shot who you know who's yeah who dies after he translates it and sends it to Billy. He keeps the original, but it's destroyed with him, like in an Iraqi camp, and then him and his family die. Just trying to, they're never able to get out the region. Billy makes it back to Switzerland. He receives the German translation, and that's really all we have to this day. And you can say, well, I guess that means it's inauthentic. But if you look at it compared to the Gospel of Matthew, it's very interesting. It offers that same genealogy you see in Matthew, and the name Emmanuel is just spelled with a J, but it's still Emmanuel. It's very remarkable. It's worthy of a lot more study, especially when you consider what Ra claims, that Yahweh is really of the Confederation, if you will, and he's Enki and always meant to help us. But Enki had his own brother who was of a higher rank named Enlil, who again had a reptilian queen, because they were genetically inbred and interbred between the reptilians and the Greys, this Anunnaki empire, who was trying to make it all happen to colonize the galaxy and take the resources and the Stargate from Orion or whatever. Who really knows? That's Elena Danan's story. And you can combine it very well with Zechariah Sitchin, though. They come here, but they come here much along after, if you will, these other civilizations on these other planets have already started. Then it's a crazy story, but it's the only story that makes any sense, is that the Anunnaki from Sirius were genetically altered, which Elena Danan agrees with, that they are mixed with the Greys, and that they more or less escaped here and found versions of themselves in the humans here, and then mixed the DNA with the Martian DNA. Of course, all this suggests Mars and Venus both had civilizations going back billions of years. Both Billy Meier and the raw material also suggest another planet in our solar system had human life but was destroyed by a war, or by warfare action that impacted the planet through a volcano. In other words, someone shot a missile or detonated an explosive at or through a massive either underground or underwater volcano, which basically blew up the planet in a chain reaction like the Death Star, if you will. This is the asteroid belt, folks. It's been called, the planet was once called Phaeton or Malona, Vulcan, Marduk, and Maldek, respectively. It all boils down to we all are one. The creator is infinite, and the creator is one. There is only one infinite creator. Ra suggests we are all holographically the logos. We are all sub-logos or sub-logwa creators in miniature. Billy Meier's material from the Pleiadians, Plejaren, suggests that there is one creation. This creation basically makes seven sub-universes, or seven super universes, if I am understanding it correctly. We are in one such sub or super universe. There are also universes connected to ours, but on a slightly different time scale, as I was saying, or rhythm. Apparently one of Billy's teachers lives in a slightly different universe to ours. That's Asket, whose name is like interesting, like ask it, and I'll tell you. But she can enter ours and return to hers. It's all way too much to process, as I was saying, but all this one is a start. We reincarnate, as our one piece of the one infinite creator comes to know itself more and more as a fractional piece of the one infinite creator. This is what Jesus, Emmanuel, taught about the one creation. The one infinite intelligence, the one infinite creator, was turned into God the Father, and then the God Father became Yahweh of the Old Testament, so that only the Jews and the Christians were worshiping the right God, even though Allah and Arabic are both derived linguistically and related culturally to Hebrew and the Old Testament through Aramaic. And of course, the peoples of Palestine, Syria, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia are all related to the original tribes of Jacob, and through Ishmael, certainly. it's just remarkable. It's all one people. These languages are linguistically similar, hence the term Semitic. Billy Meier essentially rediscovered the lost teachings of Jesus, Emmanuel, near the actual tomb where Jesus lay. In 1963, the text presented in this book was discovered by Billy in the form of scrolls encased in a preservative resin, after a Greek Catholic priest by the name of Isa Rashid discovered the actual burial cave of Emmanuel, who has been erroneously called Jesus Christ. Written in the literary language of Old Aramaic, this document was buried under a flat rock in the tomb. It was Rashid's wish that his name not be publicized. He feared, and rightfully so, that he would be persecuted by the church and the Israelis and perhaps even be assassinated, a possibility that unfortunately became true later. Okay, so aside from the UFO photo evidence, the Talmud of Jim, there's a J, so I say Jemanuel. It's supposed to be Emmanuel. God forgive me. The Talmud of Emmanuel might be the most salient reason to kill one Albert Billy Meier. It seems that his Greek priest friend Isa Rashid paid for the translating the Talmud of Emmanuel from Aramaic to German with his life. So Isa Rashid, the discoverer of the burial cave and translator of the original scrolls, was equally endangered, so that years earlier he took the precaution of withdrawing from the church to live incognito somewhere with the family he had started in the interim. Conscious of the immense power of the cult religion, he wanted to conceal both his name and the original scripts from the public. He rightfully feared for his life and for those of his beloved family, all of whom since that time had become victims of the cult religion's persecutors, by whom they were assassinated. Long before this point in time, Rashid, under the seal of secrecy that his name not be mentioned, gave the translations of the scrolls to his good friend, the editor, Billy Meier. But it was not until 1974 that Meier, in turn, received permission to make the translation of the scrolls accessible to the other interested circles. In 1963, Rashid, on various occasions, took his friend Albert Billy Meier to the actual burial cave of Emmanuel, which was practically filled with a great deal of sand and dirt. In the course of excavations, Meier subsequently found various items that confirmed the contents of the scripts. Unfortunately, it must be mentioned that the document is no longer complete, since various pieces of the scrolls were completely illegible and decayed. Furthermore, some were obviously missing. What was preserved nevertheless bears shocking witness that in the course of 2 millennia, an infamous false doctrine, a web of unequaled lies, was manufactured around the person of Emmanuel in order to erect occult religious power and unscrupulously enslave earthlings. All this truly at the cost of misled, trusting, and unaware human beings and their belongings, and above all, at the cost of innocently spilled blood throughout the dirty intrigues of the Holy See, which deceitfully preaches love for the purpose of exploitation, enslavement, and assault on the people of earth. Well, if you will, the bottom line is that the story in the Quran is true. Jesus only appeared to die. He then is resurrected 3 days later, and after appearing to die, well, he then appears to the disciples and Paul on the road to Damascus. He perhaps even goes into a UFO when he ascends, but that's neither here nor there. He eventually goes east to Kashmir, where we find that his mother Mary dies in a town that now bears her name, Murree, at the foot or the knees of the great Himalayas in Pakistan. Jesus also says Muhammad will come 500 years after him and will be a true prophet. It's noteworthy because he says this right before he's crucified. So he's not in a great state, but he says it. He does say eventually that Muhammad's teachings, as well as his own, will all be adulterated, such that none of us are getting the actual true messages and the context in which or with which we are able to understand them. For without context, we literally have no place to stand from which to gain understanding. The good extraterrestrials have a non-interference pact with us as a token of respect. They will arrive if called. They can respond to the call, but we must make the call. Jesus was of the Confederation according to Ra. He was a fourth density being who chose to come back to third density as the son of the Archangel Gabriel, according to the Talmud of Emmanuel. This is the most damaging thing, I suppose, to tie these two accounts together, along with the teaching of Edgar Cayce, which states that Jesus was also Joseph, the Egyptian prince, and Joshua, the Jewish prince, warrior, priest. Okay, so we reincarnate similarly until we come to the quintessence of who we were designed to be, which is what Jesus and the Buddha did and who they became. At some point, We join all the jagged edges together and point it toward the light. At that point, we are a mighty lighthouse, and the enemy seeks to put the light out. We must call out to the one infinite creator who manifests as infinite energy and intelligent infinity. This is how the raw material squares pantheism with panentheism. God is us and is in us. We are made of God. Yet God is separate and holy from us and will someday breathe us all back in. Until then, we must breathe on and lean in.